Look around you right now. Light surrounds everything you see. You experience the world because light enters your eyes and triggers a cascade of events inside your brain. That sounds simple, almost trivial, but the simplicity is deceptive because at this very moment light from every object in this room is traveling outward in every possible direction. When you look at a wall, light from that wall reaches your eyes, but at the same time, light from your face reaches that wall. Light from the ceiling reaches the floor. Light from the floor reaches the ceiling. Light from every surface crosses paths with light from every other surface. Space is filled with an unimaginably dense network of traveling disturbances. How does this not turn into confusion? How does all this motion not interfere in a way that destroys clarity? Do you see sharp edges and stable shapes instead of a blur of interference? And this question becomes even stranger when you realize visible light is only a tiny fraction of what is present. Right now, radio waves pass through this room, carrying voices from cities you have never visited. Television signals sweep through your body. Heat radiation flows outward from your skin. Radar pulses move invisibly through the air. X-rays from distant cosmic events pass straight through the walls. All of these are the same phenomenon. A light distinguished only by wavelength and frequency. The space you occupy is not empty. Is saturated. The reason this feels unreal is because human intuition evolved for solid objects. Objects that collide. Objects that block each other. Objects that cannot occupy the same place at the same time. Light does none of that. Light passes through light without conflict. Waves overlap without destroying one another. Information is carried simultaneously by countless signals without confusion. This is not because nature is tidy, but because it is structured in a way that allows complexity to coexist without chaos. And to understand this, you must abandon the idea of light as tiny projectiles flying through space. That picture is convenient but deeply misleading. Imagine sitting beside a swimming pool. People jump in. Water splashes. Ripples spread outward. Surface becomes a tangled web of waves intersecting and overlapping in every direction. Now imagine a small insect resting at the edge of the pool. It does not see the swimmers. It does not see the splashes. All it feels are local motions of the water pressing against it from different directions at different times. Could that insect reconstruct what is happening? Could it deduce where someone jumped or how many people are swimming? At first, this seems impossible. But in principle, every splash leaves a signature in the wave pattern. Information is not lost. It is distributed. Is what light does. When you look at something, you are not receiving a picture. You are sampling a tiny portion of a vast wave field and reconstructing meaning from it. Your eye is not a camera. It is a small opening sensitive to waves arriving from specific directions. Waves arriving from other directions largely cancel out or are ignored unless you move your eye and change the geometry. This directional sensitivity allows your brain to decode structure. From apparent chaos, out of an ocean of overlapping waves, you extract depth, shape, and position. This process happens so effortlessly that its strangeness goes unnoticed, but it is one of the most astonishing feats in nature. And it works only because light behaves as waves rather than particles. When two people stand side by side, each sees something different at the same time. Light from one person travels toward one observer, while light from the other travels toward a different observer. These signals coexist without interference, not because they avoid each other, but because they occupy the same space in a fundamentally different way. They are oscillations of electric and magnetic fields, not objects with volume. They add and subtract according to precise mathematical rules. The result is coherence rather than confusion. and this is only the visible portion of the spectrum. The waves your eye can detect are extraordinarily small, on the order of a few hundred nanometers. Narrow range is all evolution selected for, but beyond it exists a vast continuum of radiation. Infrared waves longer and slower carry heat. Microwaves and radio waves stretch from centimeters to kilometers. Ultraviolet and X-rays shrink to at ohmic and subatomic scales. All are electromagnetic waves. All follow the same laws. Propagate through space simultaneously. If this seems unbelievable, consider the radio in your hand. It does not create signals. It reveals them. The electromagnetic field in the room oscillates constantly. The antenna simply responds to specific frequencies. Tune the circuit and suddenly a voice appears. That voice was already present, encoded in the field. That you merely built a device capable of decoding it. This is not magic. This is physics. And it means the room you occupy is filled with far more information than your senses reveal. For centuries, this reality confused even the greatest thinkers. Some argued that light must be composed of particles to explain its straight line motion. Others argued it must be a wave to explain interference. They fought over which picture was correct, without realizing both were incomplete. Experiments with slits demonstrated interference beyond doubt. Then detectors revealed individual photon arrivals. Each experiment seemed to contradict the other. The truth is subtler. Light is neither classical wave nor classical particle. It is a quantum phenomenon. Photons are real. They arrive as discrete packets. They trigger detectors. But they do not follow single trajectories. When a photon travels from one point to another, it explores all possible paths simultaneously. This is not metaphor. It is how probability amplitude behave when you attempt to observe which path was taken. You destroy interference that made wave behavior visible. You force a particle-like outcome. Not because the photon changes, but because your measurement changes the question being asked. This duality dissolves when you start demanding classical categories. Is light. It obeys quantum rules. And those rules produce wave-like and particle-like effects depending on context. This is not philosophy. It is experimentally verified reality, and it leads to one of the most powerful principles. In physics, light travels along the path of least time. Out of all possible paths connecting 2 points, the contributions interfere constructively only near the one that minimizes travel time. All other paths cancel themselves out. This explains straight line propagation, deflection, refraction, and focusing. It explains mirages and sunsets. It explains lenses and mirrors. It explains why optics works at all. When light enters a medium, where it slows down, it bends to minimize time, just as a runner chooses to stay longer on land before entering water. This bending is not arbitrary. It follows precise mathematical laws derived from time minimization. A lens works by shaping glass so that all rays take equal time to reach a focus. A mirror works by shaping reflected surfaces so that delays cancel. This is not designed by intention, but by interference. The deepest insight comes when you realize light does not choose a single path. It samples all of them. Paths far from the minimum cancel due to rapidly changing phase. Paths near eye reinforce. This is why blocking part of a mirror does not destroy the image. You remove some paths, but the dominant contributions remain. This unifies quantum mechanics with classical optics. And this brings us back to where we began. The room around you is filled with waves of every possible wavelength. All coexisting, all passing through one another, all structured by interference. The fact that you perceive a stable world at all is a triumph of physics and biology acting together. Is not simple. It is not intuitive, but it is consistent. And when you understand it. Even partially, you begin to see reality not as static objects, but as dynamic fields in constant motion.
So when you ask what's inside a proton, the honest answer is energy arranged in a stable pattern,
possibilities unfolding through time. The rest of physics begins to rearrange itself in your mind. Because the same idea appears again and again in places that seem completely unrelated. What looks like a straight path is really the result of cancellation.
All the way down.
What looks like certainty
back
is
and
really
ask again,
the residue of
what's
probability.
inside an atom? Not
What
planets,
looks simple is
not
often
orbits,
the outcome
not
of
balls,
immense hidden complexity.
not stuff in the
Light
comforting
behaves the
tactile
way it
sense.
does not because
What's
it
inside
follows
an atom
rules
is
like a
fields,
disciplined
quantum
soldier.
fields.
But because countless
Ella,
alternatives eliminate
Citron
one
field,
another, leaving
quark
only
field,
what
the
survives,
gluon field,
interference
the
is
electromagnetic
not an
field.
exception.
These
This is the
fields
rule.
fill
Consider
space.
again the
They
idea
are
that a
everywhere,
photon
all the
explores
time.
all possible paths.
When we say an electron is in
This
the atom,
does not
what we
mean it
really mean
wanders
is that the
randomly.
electron field has an excitation
It means
bound
the
near the
mathematics
nucleus,
D,
shaped
ascribing
by
it
the
assigns an
allowed quantum state.
amplitude to every
The
conceivable
atom is not a
route
thing
through
the way a
space
rock
and
is a
time.
thing.
Each
It is
route
a stable
carries a phase
configuration
determined
of
by how long that
interacting
route
field
takes.
excitations held together
The
by
faster
forces
the
that are
oscillation,
themselves
more
mediated
rapidly
by other
that
excitations.
phase rotates.
There are no solid objects at
When
the
you
bottom.
sum,
There
all
is
these
no final
contributions
stuff.
must cancel.
There are
because
patterns,
the phases point
equations,
in different
symmetries,
directions,
conservation
only
laws,
near the path,
and somehow
where
those
time
produce everything you
changes
experience
least
as physical
do the
reality.
phases. Align
And
well
that should
enough to
bother you,
reinforce
because your
that
mind wants something
narrow
solid
region
at the foundation,
dominates the outcome.
something you can point to
what
and say,
you observe
that
as
is
a
what it's
ray
made
of light
But when you
is
chase
not
the atom down
a
to its
literal
core,
track,
you don't
but a
find solid
statistical
pieces.
concentration
You find math,
emerging
fields
from
defined over
interference.
space and
This
time,
is why light
assigning
seems
values
to know
everywhere,
where to go
evolving
without
according
any
to
awareness.
differential equations.
It does not
Distorts
choose.
numbers that sometimes behave
But
like
it cancels.
localized
The
particles
way
when
of
you measure
thinking
them in light.
extends
Spread out
beyond
wave
optics.
functions when you don't. You've heard the
Explains
atom
why
is mostly
electrons
empty
form
space,
stable orbits in
but
atoms
even that
without
is misleading,
radiating
because
energy
empty
out
does
it.
not mean nothing.
Explains why
The
matter has
vacuum is
solidity.
alive with quantum activity. Fields still
Explains
exist
why
there,
chemical
virtual
bonds exist.
fluctuations
It
still occur,
explains why
and the
objects have
electron's
shape
wave
at all.
function
At
extends
the
through the
microscopic
atomic
level,
region as a
everything is described
non-zero
by
amplitude.
waves of possibility
you
interfering with
push on a
themselves.
table,
Structure
you aren't feeling
emerges
tiny billiard
because
balls
only
smashing
certain
into each
patterns
other.
reinforce.
You are
The
feeling
universe builds
electromagnetic
itself by
repulsion
cancellation.
between electron
Now return
configurations
to the
and
everyday
the
experience
exclusion
of seeing.
principle preventing identical
When you
electrons
open your
from
eyes, you are
occupying the
not
same
passively
state.
receiving images,
It
though
feels
you are
solid
actively
because the rules
reconstructing
are
a
strict,
world from
not
partial
because matter
information.
is made of little hard pellets.
The light entering your
Scale
eye
makes it
carries
worse.
encoded
The
directionality
nucleus
because
is about
waves
100,000
arriving from
times
different
smaller than the
angles
atom.
strike different regions
If the
of the
nucleus
retina
were the
dot
size
is
of a marble,
directional.
the atom would be
Encoding
the size
allows
of a
your
stadium.
brain to infer
Yet the
spatial
electron,
structure,
as far as we can tell,
but that
has no
ion
size at all.
Ernst
Experiment
rests
after
on the
experiment
fact
is
that
consistent
the
with
waves
it being
remain
point-like.
coherent over short
point-like
distances.
entity occupying
Dot if light
a vast
behaved
atomic
like classical
region through
particles,
probability.
you would not be able to
Does that
form
make intuitive
images
sense?
at
Of course
all
not.
the
Nature
sharpness
doesn't care.
of. Vision depends on
Then there's
interference
spin.
being preserved until
Electrons have
detection.
intrinsic
This also
angular
explains
momentum,
limits
yet they
to
cannot be
resolution,
literally spinning
no
like a
matter how
top, because
perfect
a
a
point
lens.
has no extent to rotate.
Is you cannot focus
Still, the
light to an
property exists,
arbitrarily small point.
quantized.
The wavelength
So you only
sets
ever
a
measure
fundamental
discrete
scale
outcomes.
dot below.
Energy
That
levels
scale
are quantized
interference
too.
blurs
The
detail.
electron can only have
This
specific
is
energies
not
because
a
the wave function
technological
must fit
limitation.
into allowed standing wave patterns around the
It is
nucleus,
a property of nature.
like harmonics on a
Shorter
string.
wavelengths allow
When it
finer
changes
resolution.
levels,
That
it
is
emits
why
or absorbs a
microscopes
photon
using
with
visible
exactly
light
the
cannot
energy
resolve
difference,
atoms, while
producing
electron
precise
microscopes
spectral
can.
lines.
Electrons have
We can
shorter
calculate
wavelengths
those lines to
at high
absurd precision,
energies.
and experiments
The
match
same
them.
wave logic
The theory
applies.
works,
The idea that
but your
wavelength
intuition never
controls
gets a neat
behavior
picture.
helps make
And when you
sense
try
of
to look
why
inside
different
the
parts
atom,
of
you
the
run into another
electromagnetic
fundamental
spectrum
wall.
interact differently.
To resolve
With matter
small scales, you need
long
short
radio
wavelengths,
waves
which
pass
means
through
high
walls
energy,
because
which
their
means you
wavelengths
disturb
are
the
too
system.
large.
There
to
is
be
no
affected
passive
by small
observation in the
structures.
quantum world.
Visible
Measurement
light
doesn't merely
interacts
reveal a
strongly
pre-existing
with
fact.
molecules of
It
certain
forces a
sizes,
definite outcome
producing
from a
colored
range
dot.
of possibilities.
X-rays pass through flesh
Before measurement,
because their
a wave
wavelengths are
function,
comparable to
a
atomic
superposition
spacing
of
and
potentialities.
interact
After
weakly
measurement,
with
one
soft
actual
tissue,
result.
but strongly
So
with
what's
denser
really
material.
inside an atom?
This is not
Not little
arbitrary.
balls, not orbits, not
It is
mechanical
geometry.
trajectories. What's
and
inside is
interference
a
at work.
mathematical structure,
Every
a wave
time
function
you see
governed by the
color, you are
Schrödinger
witnessing
equation,
quantum
built from
selection
quantum fields
dot
whose
molecules absorb
excitations
specific
sometimes look like
wavelengths.
particles when you measure
Because
them.
only those
You
frequencies
can't truly
match
picture it
allowed
because the
energy
wave function
transitions.
isn't a
The rest
physical
pass
wave
by
in
or
space.
reflect.
It's It's S,
Dot color
an object
is in
an abstract
inherent
mathematical
in
space,
objects. Dot.
encoding
It is a
complex
record of which
probability
frequencies were
and yet
removed
from this
from the light.
abstract
Before it
machinery
reached your
emerges
eyes,
everything. Chemistry,
a red
biology,
object
your body, your thoughts.
is not red because
That
it emits
is what's inside
redness,
an atom,
but it is
not
red
stuff,
because
but
it
patterns
subtracts
in fields,
everything else.
written in equations.
This again is cancellation as creation.
Abstract,
Even
beautiful,
shadows
and
are
to human intuition,
patterns
almost
on a sharp
incomprehensible
shadow
math.
forms when wavelengths are small relative to the obstacle, a fuzzy. Shadow forms when wavelengths are comparable to the size of the obstruction. Light bends around edges, not because it wants to, but because paths near the edge do not cancel completely. This bending is diffraction. Is unavoidable. And it is another reminder that straight lines are approximations that work only when wavelengths are negligible. At larger scales, the same principle explains why the night sky is dark. If light traveled forever without cancellation, the sky would glow uniformly because every line of sight would end at a star. But expansion redshifts light stretching. Wavelengths until energy dissipates. Interference and geometry again shape what you see. The universe hides complexity behind apparent simplicity. The quantum description of light also dissolves the question of whether reality exists when unobserved. Photons do not need observers to behave. They evolve according to rules, whether measured or not. Measurement simply selects an outcome from possibilities. This selection is not mystical. It is interaction. When a detector clicks, it is because a quantum system became entangled with a macroscopic one producing. A definite record. What disappears is not reality but alternatives. This view removed the idea that nature waits for us to look. Nature does what it does. Interference patterns form, whether or not anyone watches them. We simply choose which aspects to reveal by how we interact. The universe is not ambiguous. It is richer than our categories. Once you internalize this, the everyday world appears layered. Objects are not solid in the classical sense. They are stable arrangement of fields. Every atom is mostly empty space held together by forces mediated by photons. The rigidity you feel when touching a table arises from electromagnetic repulsion and quantum exclusion, not from matter being dense. Light is involved even in touch, and time itself plays a role. The principle of least time connects motion with optimization. Light does not minimize distance, but duration. This subtlety matters because speed varies with medium. The universe prefers extreme action, not minimal distance. This idea generalizes further. In mechanics, systems follow paths that extremize action, not necessarily minimize it. Planets follow orbits because alternatives cancel. Gravity bends space-time, changing which paths dominate. Neural relativity extends this logic. Light follows geodesics because all other paths interfere destructively. Thus, the behavior of light becomes a window into the deeper structure of physical law. What began as a question about seeing becomes a lesson about how reality organizes itself through interference. Organization is mathematical, not intentional. It produces order without design. Think again about the invisible ocean filling the room. You are immersed in a sea of oscillation, carrying information from distant sources. Some you can decode, some you cannot, but all coexist peacefully. This coexistence is possible because linear superposition allows waves to add without destroying each other. Nonlinearity would produce chaos. The fact that electromagnetism is linear over a wide range is a gift that makes communication and vision possible. When technology exploits this gift, remarkable things happen. Fiber optic cables guide light by total internal reflection. Trapping waves through geometry. Lasers produce coherent light by enforcing phase alignment. Antennae radiate information by shaping fields. Modern civilization rests on understanding interference well enough to control it. And yet for all this control, the essence remains mysterious. Light is not tangible. It has no rest mass. It always moves at a fixed speed in vacuum. This speed links space and time, limiting causality. The invariance of light, speed forces time dilation. Length contraction. Relativity emerges because light behaves the way it does. If light were different, the structure of space-time would be different. So the next time you glance around a room, remember that what feels immediate is the end of a long chain of abstractions that light leaves source. Explores possibilities, interferes, cancels, reinforces, enters your eye trig. Rupistry becomes neural signals, becomes perception. The simplicity of sight rests on layers of complexity you never notice. And that complexity is not hidden because it is rare, but because it is universal. Understanding light does not just explain optics, it teaches humility. Our intuition is not built for quantum fields. We must rely on mathematics experiments and patience. The reward is a deeper appreciation of reality as it is rather than as it seems. The world is not made of things, but of processes. Not of objects, but of interactions. Not of certainty, but of probability, sculpted by interference. And in this understanding there is a quiet beauty. Not the beauty of simplicity, but the beauty of coherence emerging. From chaos, light does not clear the room of confusion, it thrives within it. And so do we